It's, M2C3, the work that we're doing here, and the work that Victor's doing, which is why we wanted to make sure that he was here to participate in what's going on. Okay, so over the next year, you're going to hear us use the term and the word SEAL. It stands for the Community College Equity Assessment Lab. So M2C3 has technically never been a center, even though I think that most folks think that we are, and we operate pretty much independently like a center. So we will be housed under the Community College Equity Assessment Lab, SEAL. So when you see things go out, it'll probably say M2C3/SEAL or something to that effect, and we just want you, to not be like, okay, what's going on here? And so what we are doing is we're kind of breaking apart, at least in terms of logistics, some of the things that we're doing. So the assessment work is going to be done through SEAL, which I'll talk about some of the assessment work that we're doing through that. And then the consortium, the trainings that focus on Minicolor, that will all be done through M2C3, but it's all part of the same entity. So we'll still be focused on doing research, training, and assessment. So in terms of SEAL, there are three primary instruments that we're using through SEAL. They are part of what we call our institutional assessment package. So when colleges come, they're like, hey, we're interested in doing something and understanding what's going on with either our men of color or our students of color in general. This is where we're going to point them to, and that's to this institutional assessment package. So essentially there's three instruments that are part of it. The first is the Community College Success Measure, which many of you may know the Community College Survey, and it's basically been renamed to the Community College Success Measure, so it's still the CCSM. And we've also changed the reporting style of that. Still has a focus on men of color, but in terms of reporting, we're now reporting out data that includes students of all genders. So, so when campuses come and they say, hey, can you partner with us? But we want to know about what's going on with all of our students, and we can be able to accommodate that. The Community College Student Success Inventory, CCSSI, is a self-assessment tool. Many of the programs here have requested access to it, and we provided access to that in the past. This is essentially a revised version of that, a 2.0 version, which looks at 6 critical areas for working with underserved students, particularly with men of color, but for underserved students in general. And the last area, and this is the one that we're going to essentially unveiling today, is the Community College Instructional Development Inventory, which is a faculty survey. And so I'm going to talk real quickly about each of those. So in terms of the CCSM, again, this is the student report. Typically what happens is this. A college will come to us, they're interested in understanding what's going on with their underserved students. We'll point them to, again, this IAP, the Institutional Assessment Package. We'll send them a copy of the Community College Student Success Inventory, which is a self-assessment tool for student services. And then typically if they have like a working group or an equity team or student success team, they'll work through that instrument together because it's a self-assessment tool. And then we'll then do 2 different follow-ups. One will be with students and one will be with faculty. And these are both surveys that we conduct. So with the student survey, what we do is we randomly select class sessions, and then we have a Scantron instrument which goes into those class sessions. Students complete the instrument. We do then a report that looks somewhat like this based upon responses. And we have to have a certain number of respondents per each of the categories so that we have an understanding of what's really taking place with the population. So having a large sample size is something that's important. For those of you who do quantitative research, you know how important that is. So in terms of the reporting structure, it follows a simple triage report. So you'll see that on the left-hand side are essentially our domains. So this is just a snapshot of one tiny part of the instrument and the reporting that comes out from it. So this first section up in the top left focuses on sense of belonging as it relates to faculty, and then we have a few questions that we ask on the instrument that relate to that. And then what you're doing is essentially, in terms of interpreting the report, is looking at patterns. So you'll see that it follows a triage structure, a 3-fold triage structure of it's either acceptable in terms of the scores based upon our benchmarks, and that's in the tan. It's either needs attention, is the one that's in orange, or it's an immediate concern, which is in the dark red. So when you're looking at the report and you see this information, the response should be, well, let's really focus on these areas that are in need of immediate attention or immediate concern. And then from there, the next step would then be to focus on those areas that need attention. So focus on red and then on orange. So all of our reporting has transitioned to the structure, so it's easier to understand what's taking place, and then we can explain to you how we come to those benchmarks if we're working with you on that. The report for the students also includes a predictive section. So basically, we know that there are certain things that lead to student success, such as engagement, use of services, and focus in school. Those are three things that we know are critical. So each report comes with a breakout sheet, one for faculty, one for student services, and one for those running retention programs or mail initiatives that basically tell you what to focus on, right? And it follows, again, in a very simplistic structure, check marks. One check means it's important. Two checks means it's very important. Three checks means it's extremely important. So if you're designing interventions around this, you're going to start out again with those areas where you see multiple check marks and then kind of work your way back from there. So this is the student survey. Now, we've done this survey with about 70 community colleges at this point, and we have, I believe, another 18 on board for the fall. So if you're interested in participating in that, just talk to myself and Frank, and we can get you rolling. All right, so now I want to talk a little bit about the new instrument that we have just recently unveiled and have already been doing reporting with, and that is our faculty instrument. So it's important to go to campuses and have an understanding of how students are experiencing the campuses. And that's something that we specialize in. The CCSM, I just showed you a small snapshot of it. It's based upon the research that's been conducted on men of color and on underserved students. We also know that it's important to have an understanding of how faculty perceive what is taking place. Because one of the things that we find is we go to the campus and we present student data, and the faculty would be like, well, that's not true. Or they would somehow try to negate some of the things that were taking place. So now what we do is we show both. And what we actually find is that there's, in many ways, more commonalities across the data, and it helps to kind of be like, well, you all said this, and then we can show that. So this is a faculty report. Now, what we did a few years ago is a study where we looked at instructional practices that we knew were important for student success for men of color. Does anyone have a copy of the guidebook? Okay, so that's the guidebook. You just show that up to everybody. It was, so that out of the same study, we basically identified the areas that we need to measure for instructional practice, right? Now, these are areas that have an important and intensified benefit for men of color, but they also benefit other underserved students in general as well. So this is what the faculty report looks like. So the first page that you would get would look something like this, which basically explains this is how you interpret it. Like, I'm going to show you the full report because they're very straightforward. They're only about 7 pages long. So this would be the first page, would be a cover page. Second page would be about the instrument, and basically letting you know that we have 4 different levels. So whereas the student report has a simple three levels: needs attention, immediate concern, and acceptable. This has 4 levels: acceptable, emerging concern, needs attention, and immediate concern. And they're all color-coded, so you can see what that is. And at the very bottom, you'll see recommendations that we have in terms of what should be taking place for professional development for faculty on the campus. So the first page of the report, in terms of the actual reporting of data, would look like this. Basically, green is the campus is doing well. Yellow means that might be an emerging area of concern that you need to be attentive to. Orange is obviously this is concern, and then red is that this is immediate attention. This is where you need to be focusing your professional development for your faculty in terms of working with this population. Now, how we determine the color codes is based on this. We did a national sample of 1,700 community college faculty from 125 institutions. We then identified those community college faculty who responded to that, who were from the institutions in the top quarter of institutions in terms of student success. So the benchmarks for this are based upon institutions that are essentially exemplar or high-performing community colleges. So it gives you an idea of this.